December 16, 1773, Boston Harbor became the stage for one of the most rebellious acts in history. Under the cover of night, a group of patriots disguised as Mohawk warriors boarded British ships and dumped over 90,000 pounds of tea into the sea. But this wasn't just about tea. It was an act of defiance that would ignite a revolution. How did a simple protest turn into the first sparks of war? Let's dive into the Boston Tea Party, the act of rebellion that shook an empire. Before we start, if you happen to enjoy this video and find value in it, I would greatly appreciate it if you left a like so that more people may be able to find it. Additionally, if you don't want to miss out on more videos, why not subscribe? That way you will be notified every time I upload a new video. Let's get started now, shall we? The Boston Tea Party emerged from escalating tensions between British authorities and American colonists. The dispute was over taxation without representation. In the 1760s, Parliament enacted several revenue-generating measures, including the Sugar Act of 1764 and the Stamp Act 1765. The colonists vehemently protested. When Parliament passed the Tea Act in May 1773, it proved to be the breaking point. This legislation granted the struggling British East India Company a monopoly on tea sales in America. It undercut local merchants while maintaining the contentious tea tax. Colonial leaders like Samuel Adams, John Hancock, and the Sons of Liberty organized resistance in port cities, particularly Boston. That was where Governor Thomas Hutchinson, a loyalist, insisted 3 tea-laden ships remain docked despite public opposition. Town meetings held at Faneuil Hall and Old South Meeting House drew thousands of concerned citizens. It represented all social classes, who debated potential responses to what they perceived as tyrannical British policies designed to undermine colonial autonomy and establish a dangerous precedent for future taxation without colonial consent. Following the contentious town meetings, events escalated dramatically on the night of December 16, 1773. As tensions reached their peak at the Old South Meeting House, Samuel Adams allegedly declared, "This meeting can do nothing more to save the country." Some historians interpret it as a coded signal to begin the planned action. Approximately 130 colonists, many disguised as Mohawk Indians, assembled at Griffin's Wharf. That's where the 3 ships, Dartmouth, Eleanor, and Beaver, were docked. Under the leadership of Samuel Adams, John Hancock, though he likely didn't directly participate, and members of the Sons of Liberty, the protesters methodically boarded the vessels between 7 and 10 p.m. They were working with remarkable discipline and organization. They hoisted 342 chests of British East India Company tea from the ship's holds and systematically split them open, dumping approximately 92,000 pounds, worth nearly $2 million in today's currency, of tea into Boston Harbor. It's worth noting that the protesters damaged no other property and even replaced a padlock they had broken. One participant, Benjamin Edes, reportedly kept some tea in his shoes as a souvenir. The Boston Tea Party wasn't just about tea. It was about freedom, rebellion, and making a statement. But let's be real, tea itself, it's too good to throw away. Luckily, today you don't have to protest to get high-quality tea. You just need Adagio Teas. They offer some of the best loose-leaf teas inspired by centuries of tradition, minus the British taxes. So if you want to enjoy a real cup of tea without the salt water, check out Adagio Teas using my link in the description. The aftermath of the Boston Tea Party produced profound and far-reaching consequences that fundamentally altered the relationship between Great Britain and its American colonies. When news of the destruction reached London on January 1774, it provoked outrage across British society. The destruction of private property valued at approximately £9,000, or nearly £1.5 million in today's currency. It was viewed not merely as an economic loss, but as a direct challenge to British authority and rule of law. King George III and Prime Minister Lord North determined that such defiance required a decisive response. It led a parliament to enact a series of punitive measures collectively known as the Coercive Acts. These included the Boston Port Act, which completely shut down Boston Harbor, the lifeblood of the city's economy, until the destroyed tea was paid for in full. The Massachusetts Government Act effectively revoked the colony's 1691 charter. It eliminated town meetings and placed the colony under direct royal control. The Administration of Justice Act allowed royal officials accused of crimes to be tried in Britain rather than facing potentially hostile colonial juries. Finally, the Quartering Act forced colonists to provide accommodation for British troops in their homes and buildings. These measures, far from suppressing colonial resistance, had precisely the opposite effect. Colonies that had previously been hesitant to support Massachusetts's more radical positions now sent relief supplies to Boston as its economy collapsed under the port closure. The First Continental Congress convened in Philadelphia in September 1774, with delegates from 12 colonies, creating a unified political body capable of coordinating a colonial response. They established the Continental Association, which implemented a colony-wide boycott of British goods. Within Massachusetts, alternative governance structures emerged as the royal government lost legitimacy. The Suffolk Resolves, drafted in Suffolk County, which included Boston, declared the Coercive Acts unconstitutional and encouraged colonists to form their own militias. Towns across Massachusetts began stockpiling weapons and gunpowder, while organizing Minutemen units trained to mobilize rapidly. Governor Thomas Gage, now also the military commander-in-chief, found himself effectively governing only those areas directly under British military control. The British government's severe response to the Boston Tea Party thus transformed what had been primarily a tax dispute into a constitutional crisis that raised fundamental questions about colonial rights and parliamentary authority. This shifting dynamic created the conditions that would eventually lead to armed conflict in April 1775 at Lexington and Concord, though at the time many colonists still hoped for reconciliation rather than independence. The Boston Tea Party and its aftermath, therefore, represent a crucial turning point when reform-minded protest evolved into a revolutionary movement, questioning the very foundations of British rule in America. The Boston Tea Party offers several meaningful lessons that can resonate today. Understanding the power of principled protest. The colonists didn't simply react with unfocused anger. They targeted a specific policy, the Tea Act, through deliberate, organized action. In our daily lives, this teaches us the importance of channeling frustration into constructive, focused efforts rather than generalized complaints. When we face challenges at work, in our communities, or in our personal relationships, effective change often comes from identifying specific issues and taking deliberate action, recognizing the value of community solidarity. What made the Boston Tea Party effective wasn't individual action, but coordinated community response. The protesters worked together methodically, and afterward, colonies supported Boston during its economic hardship. This reminds us that addressing significant challenges often requires building alliances and support networks rather than struggling alone. Whether facing workplace issues, neighborhood problems, or personal difficulties, community solidarity amplifies our ability to create meaningful change. Understanding that small actions can trigger significant consequences. The dumping of tea, a relatively contained event lasting just a few hours, sparked a chain reaction that fundamentally altered history. Our daily choices and actions, though they might seem minor in isolation, can sometimes create ripple effects far beyond what we initially imagine. This perspective encourages mindfulness about our decisions and recognition that even small acts of courage or conviction matter. Learning the importance of standing for principles over convenience. The colonists could have accepted cheaper tea and the economic benefits it offered, but they recognized this short-term gain would establish a dangerous precedent. This teaches us to consider the longer-term implications of our choices rather than focusing solely on immediate benefits. Whether declining to participate in workplace practices that violate our values or avoiding consumer choices that compromise ethical standards, principled positions often require sacrificing short-term convenience. Recognizing that communication breakdowns often precede conflict, the Tea Party resulted partly from Britain's failure to understand colonial concerns and colonists' inability to effectively convey their grievances through established channels. This reminds us of the critical importance of open communication and genuine listening in preventing conflicts from escalating. In our relationships, workplaces, and communities, creating spaces for authentic dialogue and truly hearing others' perspectives can prevent minor disagreements from transforming into major ruptures. These lessons remind us that history isn't simply a collection of distant events, but a source of wisdom that can inform how we navigate our complex world today.